crore COVID-19 vaccines administered in a single day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds the efforts of people making the drive a success. Prime Minister Narendra Modi stresses on the need for international cooperation to address humanitarian crisis and long-term security concerns in Afghanistan. Holds telephonic conversation with his Italian counterpart. Prime Minister Modi to dedicate the renovated complex of Jallianwala Bagh Smarak to the nation today evening. Will also inaugurate museum galleries developed at the Smarak. Government's flagship financial inclusion program, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, completes 7 years today. Scheme was launched by Prime Minister Modi in 2014, which aims to provide universal access to banking facilities. US on alert for further Kabul attacks and race to complete evacuations. White House says next few days will be most dangerous. Russia calls for rapid efforts to help form an inclusive government. As the Delta variant becomes the dominant strain in the US, COVID hospitalizations hit 8-month high over 1 lakh. Hospitalizations have more than doubled in the past month. Indian top order fights back on the third day of test match between India and England. At stumps, Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara unbeaten at the crease, with India trailing by 139 runs. India will be resuming their innings on the fourth day from 215 for 2. Good morning. You're watching DD India and I'm Preeti presenting this bulletin. Our top story first. India has achieved another milestone in the nationwide COVID vaccination drive. More than 1 crore COVID vaccination doses have been administered under the drive. US carries out a drone strike targeting an Islamic State in eastern Afghanistan a day after a deadly attack in Kabul's airport. US says initial indications are that they have got killed in the attack. Prime Minister Narendra Modi stresses on the need for international cooperation to address humanitarian crisis and long-term security concerns in Afghanistan. Holds telephonic conversation with his Italian counterpart. Record vaccination numbers of over 1 crore COVID vaccines administered in a single day. Prime Minister Modi lauds the efforts of people making the drive a success. Prime Minister Modi to dedicate the renovated complex of Jallianwala Bagh Smarak to the nation today evening. Will also inaugurate museum galleries developed at the Smarak. Government's flagship financial inclusion program, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, completes 7 years today. Scheme was launched by Prime Minister Modi in 2014, which aims to provide universal access to banking facilities. As the Delta variant becomes dominant strain, the US COVID hospitalizations hit 8-month high over 1 lakh. Hospitalizations have more than doubled in the past month. Meanwhile, US President Biden slams China for lack of transparency and support on COVID origin investigation. Big victory for India in Tokyo Paralympics. Paddler Bhavina Patel beats China's Miao Zhang for 3-2 to storm into the gold medal round in table tennis women's singles class 4. India top order fights back on third day of the test match between India and England. At stumps, Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara unbeaten at the crease with India trailing by 139 runs. India will be resuming their innings on the fourth day from 215 for 2. Good morning, you're watching DD India and I'm Preeti presenting this bulletin. The big breaking news coming in this hour: the United States has carried out drone strike against Islamic State planner in Afghanistan. US Central Command said that the strike took place in Nangarhar province east of Kabul. As per the initial reports, an Islamic State planner of the Islamic State Khorasan has been killed in the airstrike. According to the news agencies, the move was in retaliation for the devastating suicide bombing by Islamic State, which killed more than 160 Afghans and 13 military personnel. Also, the United States told citizens to leave Kabul airport gates immediately. US President Joe Biden vowed on Thursday that the United States would hunt down those responsible for the attack and said that he had ordered Pentagon to come up with plans to strike at the perpetrators. And our correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran is joining us on phone line. Ramesh, good morning. The United States has carried out a drone strike against Islamic State planner in Afghanistan. Spell out more details. We tell our viewers that the strike took place in Nangarhar province east of Kabul, and the Islamic State planner of Islamic State Khorasan has been killed in the airstrike. To begin with, you give us the details.
Indeed. Good morning, Preeti. As you just mentioned, that this is what the U.S. Defense Ministry describes as quote-unquote over-the-horizon counter-terrorism operation, meaning thereby that they essentially used a drone, an unmanned aerial vehicle equipped with missiles and other such armaments to target with pinpoint accuracy and precision their target on the ground. And this, in this case, we are told by the U.S. Defense Ministry that the target was one of the planners of Thursday evening's attacks near the Kabul airport, and the drone strike took place in the wee hours of Saturday or Friday, as per Friday U.S. time, and the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Defense Ministry have put out separate statements afterwards. The Defense Ministry says, and I'm quoting from their statement here, initial indications are that we killed the target, unquote. So clearly they were targeting, as you mentioned, the planner of the ISK, the Khorasan group, which, by the way, has very close links with elements in neighboring Pakistan, Preeti, and this has been a concern for many a country around the world, including India. Remember, the Islamic State, Khorasan group in particular, has very strong linkages with Taliban, with the Haqqani network, and by proxy, by extension, elements in Pakistan. And one clear indication from last evening's strike, the drone strike, Preeti, is that this, as you mentioned, took place in the Nangarhar province, which is in the eastern part of the country. And this borders Pakistan. This has an international border with Pakistan. And we know that the IS terrorists operate in Nangarhar and the adjoining Kunar province bordering Pakistan. So this is another indication of the strong linkages that exist between these various terror groups, especially after 170 odd Afghan peoples and 13 U.S. Army personnel were killed in Thursday evening's attacks near Kabul airport. Preeti?
All right. Yes, Ramesh, these were the details. I want you to tell us more about what implications will it have. U.S. President says the evacuations will continue, and he also has specifically said that there is a credible threat also in the coming days at Kabul airport. Along with this, he has urged the citizens to leave Kabul airport gates immediately. When we talk of the repercussions of this, what is your evaluation?
Well, Preeti, as you mentioned, there are a number of possible consequences or contingency measures that the U.S. and its allies could take in the immediate future. Why? Because we are barely 3 days away from the U.S. deadline of 31st August of pulling out all its troops and civilians from Afghanistan. And as we speak, the entire country, the capital city are all firmly in the grip of Taliban, except for a few square kilometer area inside the Kabul airport, which is now, we are being told, is still very much in the hands of the US and NATO forces. Remember, Pentagon put out a statement not so long ago saying that we deny reports of Kabul, of Taliban taking control of parts of the airport, which they're firmly denied. So as things stand, the Kabul airport is firmly with the US troops. But that said, evacuations are still being carried out, and President Biden himself has said that we will continue evacuating till the last moment, which means that they are scrambling to evacuate the 1,000-odd American citizens still languishing in Afghanistan, and other nationals also being received at the Kabul airport and ready for evacuation. But as things stand now, the US says that we are expecting similar attacks in the immediate future, meaning thereby that a second attack or a second terror attack is very likely. The probability is high, and therefore they say we are taking all contingency measures and we are ready to retaliate further if provoked. But that said, we also heard from US sources saying that we will not allow the emergence of an Al-Qaeda-like outfit in Afghanistan, similar to what happened in 2001, when Taliban gave shelter to Osama bin Laden, gave him support, and which led, as we know by now, to the 9/11 terror attacks in New York City. So this time they say we will not allow the IS or any terror group to target the US homeland from Afghanistan or after receiving support or safe haven in that country.
All right, Ramesh, you stay with us. At present, we are joined in by General S.A. Hussain, retired former GOC 15 Army Corps. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on DD India. When we talk of this strike by the US, a very prompt action by the US there, given the way the Kabul airport was attacked. What is your evaluation of what is the situation there and what would be its immediate repercussions?
Firstly, thank you. My name is General Atta Hasnain, not Hussain. So just keep that in mind. And as far as your question is concerned, the immediate response to what President Biden had promised and what the Americans have executed is that it was expected. No superpower is going to accept this kind of a situation in which it has suffered such heavy casualties at the hands of terrorists and not be seen to be immediately responding to it. This area of Nangarhar has earlier also received US strikes. If you may remember, the mother of all bombs, which was launched about 4 years ago, was also at this very place against these very terrorists of the Islamic State, Khorasan, at that particular time. Now, as to the effectiveness of this particular strike, which is a drone strike and not a proper aerial strike as such, I'm not so sure how militarily effective this is and what casualties it can cause. To my mind, a response in such a quick time frame with given a drone attack as such should achieve only something marginal and more psychological than anything else. Because the terrorists are known to merge well with population centers, and what has also been confirmed by the Americans is that there are no civilian casualties at all. So I would look at this particularly as a first knee-jerk response, a reaction from the United States, keeping the respect of the US armed forces, of the US political leadership, etc. And no doubt that in the very near future, we may see many more of this as intelligence starts coming in a little more, in a more focused kind of a way, because these strikes without intelligence are meaningless. In today's world, much of this intelligence also comes from satellite imagery. The Americans have been here for 20 years. They know this area like the back of their hand. So they obviously will keep focusing on it and keep acquiring more and more information. As to the situation at the Kabul airport, I was just listening to all the comments which were going on your show. Absolutely endorse that completely. The possibility of more strikes taking place, terror strikes taking place around Kabul airport is very much there, primarily because this is a state of absolute chaos. I'm sure some more organization may have come in the last 48 hours or 36 hours or so, but the fact remains there are no clear demarcation lines. The US troops who flew in are there. They are not deployed in the ideal way in which they were deployed earlier while they were existing in Afghanistan pre their withdrawal. There is merger of lines between the Taliban holding something, the Americans holding something. The common objective of the Taliban and the Americans for the first time is to prevent terror strikes by an organization which is targeting both of them at the moment. So something more can be expected, definitely. The IS, Islamic State, Khorasan, realizes that this is a situation in the next 7-8 days up to the 31st or beyond, where targets are available, and it's got these possible situation where it can actually depict itself, show itself in a very, very show its own significance in a very great way to the international community. So I expect that next 3 days are going to be very crucial. I'm not sure whether there's going to be an extension for the American deadline, but the next 3 days are going to be very crucial. Now, firstly, also because a lot of Americans, a lot of other people are stuck in other cities, other places in Afghanistan who will make efforts to try and gravitate to Kabul and the Kabul airport area. And that itself is going to pose a major challenge.
All right. Before I put the next question to you, General Hasnan, I seek your pardon. But you're talking of the situation, the fluid situation in Afghanistan. US striking back and responding to a terror attack that happened at Kabul airport. Added to that, at this time, the Afghan soil would be ripe enough for to act as a safe haven for other outfits as well, the way we saw it happen when Taliban last came to power. Added to that, we also have a Taliban group there, holding on to the reins of the administration, also telling the international world that this time around they are showing a progressive face and that they will put forth a progressive government. Put all this together, what do we expect? There is indeed more chaos in Afghanistan. The situation is very fluid, but where are we actually heading to? Because US is moving out August 31st, barely 3 days from now. Added to that, we have a Taliban group there, a two-faced, if we can call it, and we also have the Afghan soil ripe enough to play host to the other terror outfits as well. So, what is your evaluation of what exactly is happening there, and what could be, what could it lead to in the near future?
Thank you. A very good question indeed. And there's no doubt about it that this is the kind of environment of chaos in which no one seems to be actually in control. This is the kind of environment in which terrorists actually thrive. And sure enough, the Islamic State has made full use of it. There are many other groups here who are in different states, in the sense, for example, you had fighters coming from Pakistan, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed. It is even known that Maulana Azhar Masood has actually gone all the way to Kandahar to probably meet Mullah Baradar, and perhaps trying to make the first forays to try and make sure that his group gets the maximum out of this in a situation of chaos, particularly in terms of weaponry, in terms of support from the Taliban, seems to be in terms of linkage with the highest leadership of the Taliban, etc. Similar efforts are going to be made by many other groups, because this is ideal terrorist country where there is lawlessness, there are badlands, logistics is not such a major problem here. There are borders which are with different countries, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Pakistan. I mean, the n number of countries with whom borders exist. So, as I said, this is an ideal territory. Now, we can expect that one thing, the Americans, although they keep professing that they are hands off from Afghanistan after this, but this particular attack and the feasibility of more terrorist activity in Afghanistan in the future has actually turned this whole situation around. The Americans professed that they were leaving this area after having achieved their aim, and a kind of an assurance that the soil of Afghanistan will not be used for terrorist activity against a homeland, against American homeland. No such guarantee can be given by anyone today. The manner in which the Islamic State has demonstrated this year, it is obvious that it can go from strength to strength. So the Americans are going to keep a hawk's eye on this area. even though they may not have physical presence, but they're going to keep a hawk's eye. Remember, even a few weeks ago, the Canada and some other European countries too had also promised that in case terrorists get back here, this area becomes a terrorist haven once again, they will not hesitate to form this again. So remember, the American air power is a huge thing, and it's not going to be easy. They can easily bomb a lot of areas in Afghanistan, not allow the terrorists to settle down here, keep the Taliban on tenterhooks and make them absolutely accountable for the activities which take place here. So this is what we can expect in the near future, although there will be a tussle on the ground between terrorists themselves, internecine fighting between the terrorists themselves. Many of the Pakistani terrorists, the East Turkestan movement, there are terrorists, the Al-Qaeda itself, most of them don't get along. The Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Islamic State are hand in glove with each other. They are the two who will probably cooperate with each other. Whether this will have an immediate effect on the Indian hinterland, on our side of Jammu and Kashmir and places like that, is still a little early to say, because while this complexities are on, while all these actions are on, I don't think that the others will find the time and focus to be able to get to look at Jammu and Kashmir in any way. But in the immediate wake of all this, this is something that we have to keep a hawk's eye on this. Our intelligence agencies have really got to be up.
All right, we'll continue that, but at present, let's very quickly tell our viewers about the U.S. Central Command releasing a statement on counter-terrorism strike on ISIS-K planner. Now, according to the statement, U.S. military forces conducted an over-the-horizon counter-terrorism operation today against an ISIS-K planner. Now, the unmanned airstrike occurred in the Nangarhar province of Afghanistan. The initial indications are that we killed the target. We know of no civilian casualties. Captain Bill Urban, U.S. Central Command spokesman. All right, General Hasnain, we're talking of this fluid situation in Afghanistan and the concern there. But what role can the international community play at this point in time? Can the countries unite together and play a role in the, in Afghanistan at present, given that there is no administration or no government at present there? Having said that, would you also, or for that matter, how would you react to it that there are many reports which say that US, the withdrawal of the US troops at present, the timing of that was not appropriate enough? Would you also second that? And can the international communities together, the other countries together, can they militarily or through some other way, can they play a role in somewhat stabilizing the situation in Afghanistan?
Firstly, as to the timing of the withdrawal, this could have, I mean, there's no two ways about it. This was the worst way that it could have done. I mean, timing-wise, it could have happened at any time, but it is the worst way that it could have done. I've repeatedly said on your programs earlier too, one of the most difficult operations of war that any armed forces knows about is called withdrawal. Attack and defense and advance and operations like that are comparatively simpler to plan. Withdrawal is the most difficult because it always happens in a time of chaos. And in chaos, to find order is very, very difficult. Having said that, the international community is not known to be unified. There are fractious elements within it. We know that the European Union and the United States perhaps would be on the same side, Japan along with it. You would find the China and Russia almost on the same side also. Surprisingly, we have not even had a United Nations Security Council, formal Security Council meeting in which some kind of a unity can be displayed and shown to the Taliban. Everyone at the moment is cultivating their own interests. The Chinese have clearly said that they will cooperate with the Taliban. The Russians started in the beginning but cooled off slightly. So we are in a state where different nations have different approaches and different attitudes at the moment. For them to be brought together at this particular stage to, for example, to take any military action as such, to my mind is absolutely unlikely. The international community at the most what they can do is perhaps get together in the United Nations, condemn this convey a very strong message to the Taliban that sanctions will be imposed. They will be kept out of all international institutions, all economic support from international institutions that the Taliban could expect would be cut off completely unless there's total cooperation as far as counter-terrorist activities, anti-terrorist activities in Afghanistan are concerned. This should be the focus, the clear message from the international community, including all nations, to the Taliban, that on this particular issue, there will be no two ways and they will be all unified.
All right, General Hasnan, thank you so much for joining us on DD India this morning and sharing your insights. So that was our guest, General Hasnan, telling us more about what could be expected ahead when we talk of just 3 days remaining, when we talk of the withdrawal of US troops. Also, we had our colleague Ramesh Ramachandran join and also tell us about the current situation there in Afghanistan. So that was the latest development in Afghanistan, US conducting an air strike, and which it claims that it killed ISIS-K planner in that strike. We'll keep you updated. Meanwhile, let's get to other updates also. Prime Minister Modi spoke on telephone with Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi. Now, the two leaders discussed the recent developments in Afghanistan and its implications for the region and also the world. They strongly condemned the horrific terror attack at Kabul International Airport and also emphasized the need to ensure the safe repatriation of stranded people. The leaders stressed upon the need for international cooperation, including at the level of G20, in addressing the humanitarian crisis and also long-term security concerns arising out of the developments in Afghanistan. The two leaders also discussed other important issues on the G20 agenda, such as climate change, and in this context, they exchanged views on other forthcoming multilateral engagements too, such as COP20. Prime Minister appreciated Italy's dynamic leadership in productively steering the discussions within the G20. The two leaders agreed to remain in touch on bilateral and global issues, especially on the situation in Afghanistan. So that's it in this edition of the news this hour. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.